When I first started researching this topic, I was at my doctor's office and I asked my doctor what he thought about physician-assisted suicide. He told me that he actually had a patient at that time that had problems with her kidneys. She had needed several transplant kidneys, and she actually needed another one. She had been going through dialysis for years. Nothing was helping, and at that point she had actually chosen to take herself off of all life-prolonging measures. He seemed worried that it was going to be painful and terrible for her, but there's really nothing else that he could do legally. We may be young now, we may feel like we're at the top of our game, but whenever I woke up about 3 years ago and I couldn't feel the lower half of my body, and no one ever was able to figure out what happened to me, I realized that things can change immediately, and your quality of life can completely go downhill, and you don't know what's coming for the future. I believe that physician-assisted suicide should be made legal in order to provide a more comfortable and a more dignified way for seriously ill patients in chronic diseases to be able to end their lives when they choose. In an article called Last Rites by Laura Spinney, we meet Elaine Buckley. She has a chronic condition. She's going to need a ventilator in the next few months. She finds it hard to walk without a walker, and she will soon find herself in what she calls the glass coffin stage, where she's unable to speak or move, but she's still able to think and feel pain. She has a few options. She could go ahead and live her life as normal and take everything that comes along with it, or she could go to Switzerland, where she could get a cocktail of drugs that would end her life legally. She would have to make the trip entirely by herself, because where she lives, if anybody helps her get there, they would be assisting in her suicide, and that would be illegal. She said in her own words, "It's a ridiculous thing that I will have to go while I'm still able to move, which might be before I'm actually ready to die." Access to these services are only available in a very few places. There's Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Maine, Oregon, and Belgium. It's very interesting because in those places there's been a rise in tourism from seriously ill patients called suicide tourists. Groups have called on tighter restrictions so that people would not be able to come from other countries, but voters in the countries where it's legalized have refused. The representative of support group Ted Goodwin said, "No one is more vulnerable than those who are dying and in pain, and society can provide protection for vulnerable individuals." I propose that we expand people's access to physician-assisted suicide. I understand that euthanasia will probably not be supported by most. The differences in physician-assisted suicide, a doctor provides the tools or the medications that you need in order to end your life, but in euthanasia, the doctor actually ends your life for you. People are not as accepting of that. It's only legal in 3 countries. However, Andy Ho has actually reported in an article called "Letting the Terminally Ill Die with Dignity" that the consent that is used for physician-assisted suicide is primarily the same type of consent as that which is used in the Advanced Medical Directive, where you elect to have your body taken off of life-prolonging techniques. So you would choose when you were going to die. It would just be a lot more painful in that way. Like I said before, it's legal in Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands. That's where euthanasia is legal. And physician-assisted suicide is legal in Switzerland and the U.S. states of Oregon, Washington, and Montana. In France and Spain, Australia, Massachusetts, they are debating whether we should allow people to be able to have this right to choose when they die. And even in the UK, which is a heavily religious country, very influenced by Protestantism and Catholicism, there was a landmark study by many medical experts that said a person suffering from a terminal illness who is likely to die within 12 months is of sound mind and has settled intention to die should have the choice to do so. From a practical standpoint, which is a terrible thing to look at it in this way, but it's also important, Ted Goodwin, president of the World Federation of Right to Die Societies, has said that aging society, which is what we're seeing now, where we have more old people than we have younger people, and it's going to get more like that because of the baby boomers, 1/2 of medical costs are going to the last 3 to 6 months of a disease where nothing that can medically be done is going to change the trajectory of that disease, and very little might even reduce the pain that's associated with it. Roland Graff, who's also a priest and vice president of the Human Life Society, said pressure is growing on individuals who can no longer give to society, which is what is expected of them. They are increasingly feel that they are worthless to society and their family, and this leads to increased rates of suicide for the elderly, which already has high rates of suicide because of their loss of identity. Mark Lemestre of the newspaper Province wrote about the Netherlands that there's actually been more support come out since they've started doing this. In healthy elderly people, the support rate has jumped from 58% in 2001 to nearly 70% in 2010. Now what you can do is you can talk to your elected officials, you can speak to those that might disagree with the process, and you can donate money to the groups like the Right to Die Foundation. After Kevorkian went away in America, there hasn't been a lot of debate on it. The idea of having physician-assisted suicide, but when you think about people like Miss Buckley, the lady that goes to my doctor's office, and what happened to me even, you don't know what's coming in the future, and I don't think any of us want to be trapped in the glass coffin, our only chance to starve to death or to suffocate. So let's reignite the debate. Thank you.